A quadruple murder rocks a small Kentucky town to its core.
Oh, please, my brother has been shot.
It was probably the worst crime scene I've seen in almost 20 years of doing this.
As a mystery unravels.
What would possess someone to kill a mother, a father, and a daughter?
What could have happened, and why did it happen?
A homegrown horror is unmasked.
The way her body was found was particularly disturbing.
I'll never forget that, ever.
Leaving grieving relatives to seek justice.
Before that, I was not a person that carried a weapon. Needless to say, things changed.
There's evil in this world.
I'm Troy Roberts. I've come to Western Kentucky to find out how a beloved and God-fearing family was killed and to learn what would drive someone to commit such a brutal and senseless murder. When you drive into Cadiz, Kentucky, what you notice are the rolling farms, the tobacco barns, and the mom-and-pop shops. It's a bit like driving into America's past.
Cadiz is just a really neat little town. It has beautiful streets. It has old historic homes. The people are very proud of their contributions to the history of Western Kentucky.
The Champion family has lived in this part of Western Kentucky for generations. Hi, I'm Troy Roberts.
I'm Lisa Champion.
Thanks for having me. It's beautiful here.
Well, it looks better when it's not as wet. We've had an extremely wet February.
Every time Lisa Champion steps out onto her front porch, she is forced to relive the worst day of her life.
I know your loved ones are in your heart every day, but
When you walk outside your home and you see this reminder across the street where your loved ones were brutally murdered, how do you get past that?
It's very difficult. I harbor a lot of anger, much anger, but there's some days where I'll just break down crying, just wailing.
Lisa's brother, Lindsey Champion, was just a young boy when his parents moved to the family farm in the late 1950s.
Lindsay and I, we had a bond because we did so much together.
what kind of man was Lindsey?
He was fun. He was funny. He has a very dry sense of humor.
Lindsey met his wife Joy in high school. They married soon after graduation in July 1972.
Tell me about your sister.
She was just Joy, just like her name. She taught school. She loved her students, and she was a wonderful teacher.
While Joy was in the classroom, Lindsey worked as the director of a farmers' credit union and was an elder at the family's church.
He was devoted to Joy and his family. I never heard him say a bad word about anybody. Good, God-fearing people.
But despite the couple's happy marriage, there was something missing in Joy's life.
So she had several miscarriages.
Yes, she lost a couple of babies, and it was hard. They wanted a child.
So after years of trying and failing to have a baby on their own, Joy and Lindsey decided to adopt.
Tell me about the arrival of Ryan.
He was born in September of 1978, and they adopted him around December or January.
They must have been elated.
Yes, yes. And it was just like he was their own child.
Lindsey and Joy doted on their son. Then, when Ryan was 5 years old, a miracle happened.
Joy was able to conceive and able to carry up until full term. And Emily was born April 29th, 1983.
Joy and Lindsey loved their two children and treated them equally. But like many siblings, Emily and Ryan didn't always get along perfectly.
We did begin to notice that whenever Emily would get attention, then he would do whatever he had to do to get the attention away from her.
That's a sibling rivalry, perhaps, that kind
Perhaps
of...
so, yes.
As the years went by, Emily and Ryan took very different paths.
You know, Emily knew from an early age what she wanted to do, and she set her sail, and she accomplished what she wanted to do.
But Ryan didn't seem to possess his sister's ambition.
He was bright, as bright as Emily. He just didn't apply himself. Where Emily set goals and worked and studied, he didn't want to do that.
In search of a purpose, Ryan joined the Army in his mid-20s.
You know, his parents supported him, and they had good expectations for him, you know, and they thought the military would be a good fit for him.
After almost 8 years in the military, Ryan was discharged. Now in his 30s, he moved back to Western Kentucky to the nearby city of Oak Grove. Meanwhile, after graduating from Auburn University, Emily, now 31 years old, had moved further south to Louisiana to work as a horse veterinarian at a racetrack. And Joy and Lindsay, now retired in their 60s, were enjoying their golden years. In late October 2014, Emily Champion came home to spend time with her parents. Saturday, October 25th, was a busy day for the family. Emily ran in a local marathon, and later, Joy and Lindsay attended their friend Debbie's birthday party.
We had a great time. And when they got ready to leave, hugged them, and that was the last time we saw them.
That was the last time.
The next morning started off just like any other Sunday. Lindsay and Joy attended services at Katie's Church of Christ. Emily stayed home to recuperate from her marathon.
It was a beautiful day. I mean, it was blue sky, fall, not a cloud in the sky. And I even said that day from the pulpit, this is going to be a great day.
After church let out, the Champions returned home. Just after 11 a.m., Lindsay Champion's sister Lisa heard loud gunshots coming from her brother's house across the street.
I just thought it was very unusual that time of day, and I got up and went down to the bedroom, and I heard something at my door, and it was, "Lisa, Lisa." So I come down to the hallway, and there he is at my front door.
Your nephew.
Right. And he's got the pistol in his hand. His wrists were taped with just a small amount of duct tape around his wrist. And he's saying, "Call 911.
And ma'am, what's your emergency? My nephew, Ryan Champion, just came to my door, and his wrists have been tied with duct tape, and I haven't been able to find out what's wrong. He doesn't appear to be injured, but I don't know what's happened."
While still on the line with the dispatcher, Lisa was able to get a bit more information from Ryan.
And he said, "This guy that liked Emily busted into the house." And I said, "Do we need an ambulance?" And he said, "Yeah, we need an ambulance."
Okay, ma'am, where would I be sending the ambulance to? Right across the road. I'm going to go over there with him, okay? Okay, ma'am.
So I cut the tape off of his wrist. And I say, "Well, we're going over there." And so we drive over to the house. And I just say, "Well, where is everybody?" And he just says, "They're in there." And I said, "What do you mean they're in there?" And he said, "You don't want to go in there." So at that point, I get out of the truck. I go to the door, and there's a bullet hole. And open the door.
911, where's your emergency? Oh, please, my brother has been shot, and his wife, Joy. My nephew is here, and my niece has been shot. Oh, please.
He's been evil.
Evil?
Yes. What would you call somebody that murdered your family?
We told her she was under arrest, and she said she wasn't.
She wasn't.
Oh, please, my brother has been shot, and his wife, Joy. My nephew is here, and my niece has been shot. Oh, please.
Lisa Champion had just discovered the bodies of her brother, sister-in-law, and niece gunned down in their home. Only her nephew, Ryan, had managed to escape.
Emergency responders are arriving now, and so from there, they pretty much took over.
Former Trigg County Sheriff Ray Burnham was one of the first responders on the scene.
So, were you familiar with the name Champion when you got here?
Yes, sir, I was. She was my elementary school teacher.
Really? Joy was?
Mm-hmm.
That's so horrific for you.
Miss Champion, I said I wouldn't do this. Miss Champion, she was beloved by everybody. She was a great teacher. Everybody thought a lot of her. Mr. Champion, I knew him. I did not know him as well. And Emily, I knew her, but did not know her as well.
Still to this day, it's raw.
It's the first time back since that day.
In need of additional assistance, the sheriff's office called in the Kentucky State Police to help with the investigation.
It was probably the worst crime scene I've seen in almost 20 years of doing this. It was an indoor-outdoor scene, and outside was the father. He had obvious gunshot wounds to his head. He was out on a concrete landing off the side of the house.
And once you went inside, what did you see?
Saw a girl around the other side of the wall that was duct taped up over her face, from her nose to the bottom of her chin, duct tape, probably 7 or 8 times around. Hands duct taped together, real thick. Feet duct taped together as well, and 2 bullet holes in her head.
That was Emily?
That was Emily, yes, sir. And then Joy, where she was shot, was the front of her face, and she was laying slumped over face down.
In addition to the 3 members of the Champion family, police also discovered a 4th body inside the house, an unidentified male.
I was thinking, who would do this? Who would come in there and do this to this family, and who was the guy laying on the floor?
In search of answers, Sergeant Miller went back outside to speak with the tragedy's sole survivor. Ryan said he had been at his parents' home with his sister when suddenly they heard someone enter the house.
Ryan said that he and Emily were in the living room, and he heard somebody come in, and they both thought that it was their parents home early from church.
But it wasn't Lindsay and Joy. It was a man Ryan recognized. His name was Vito Reservato.
Vito came all the way, and he had a handgun and a roll of duct tape, one in each hand.
Ryan didn't seem to know much about Vito, only that they had met just days earlier, and Vito had quickly become obsessed with his sister Emily.
According to Ryan, Vito put the gun on Ryan and said, "If you do something stupid, I'm going to hurt your sister." And he said that Vito taped him up and told him, "Don't move, don't do anything stupid. I'm not going to hurt anybody." And then taped up Emily.
The parents arrive at the house, and what happens next?
Vito took off running. He went out the side door.
A moment later, Ryan said he heard gunshots outside.
And what happened next?
Vito came running back and ran past Ryan, and he said he immediately put the gun on Emily and shot twice.
Still bound to the chair, Emily Champion was executed with 2 gunshots to her head. Ryan said that's when Vito turned the gun on him.
And that's when Ryan made his move and fight the gun away from him and shoot him 1 time in the head. And he said it was over with at that point.
What Ryan couldn't explain was Vito's motive. What reason could Vito have had to kill the Champion family? As Ryan recounted his ordeal, word of the murders began to spread around the small, close-knit town. Friends and family were already rushing to the scene.
When we got there was yellow tape and police, and Lisa told me that Joy and Lindsay was dead, that they'd been shot. And I remember screaming. And then a few minutes later, I said, "Where's Emily?" And she said, "She's there too." And then I said, "Where's Ryan?" And she said, "He's in the ambulance over there." I said, "Is he hurt?" And she said, "No." And that was all the details I knew at that time.
So what was your gut telling you?
I was in shock. I just couldn't think beyond that they were gone, and I just couldn't believe it. You know, what could have happened? And why did it happen?
That was exactly what investigators wanted to find out. Did the Champions have any known enemies?
None. I never could find anybody to ever say a bad thing about them. Just good people.
As members of the community rallied around Ryan, investigators determined that the alleged shooter, Vito Reservato, was a 22-year-old local.
He had this ID on his person, and you'll notice he has got a very distinct birthmark on his face, and so they were able to identify him.
Vito Reservato.
Yes.
Who was he?
Can't really tell you a whole lot about Vito's background. I know he had a young child. When this happened, friends and people who knew of Vito were shocked that he was engaged in this kind of behavior.
Any criminal past?
No criminal past.
Investigators wondered, why would a young man with no record suddenly snap and kill an entire family? They also had a long list of questions for the one person who managed to escape the scene completely unharmed.
Why is he not injured? Why does he not have any marks on him at all? How is that possible?
So, Josh, you going for our Drive Safe and Safe discount?
Yep. Using the app, driving safe.
Police have a long night ahead of them as they try to figure out what would possess someone to kill a mother, a father, and a daughter. It is very obvious that these people were loved in this community. Officers also found a fourth body. Police believe it belongs to the man who murdered the three champions.
As investigators continued to process the brutal crime scene late into the night, they soon realized things were simply not adding up. Why would Vito kill the woman he supposedly was infatuated with?
Ryan's story that Vito was obsessed with Emily just didn't make any sense to me.
It turns out Lindsay Champion's sister Lisa had also been skeptical of her nephew's story from the moment he showed up at her front door. She especially had trouble believing that the alleged killer, Vito Reservato, had become instantly obsessed with her niece.
Emily is a little bit too much like me. She's not somebody that you would warm up to quickly. She was a wonderful young lady, but I thought, I can't believe that somebody falls head over heels in love with her automatically and is just infatuated with her, so infatuated that they resort to doing something as drastic as what he did. And I thought, this just doesn't make sense.
So why was Vito at the house that day? Police needed to investigate further. As they continued speaking to the survivor, they were eager to learn more about the relationship between Vito and Emily. As it turned out, Vito had recently worked for Ryan.
Ryan did odd jobs. He did construction work and remodeled bathrooms and stuff like that. So he said he had hired Vito because Vito was down on his luck, needed some money, and he was going to hire Vito to help him work.
According to Ryan's initial story, he met Vito just days earlier on Thursday, October 23rd. He brought Vito over to his parents' home to help gather some tools, and it was then that Vito first met Emily.